Cheerful good day, everybody. I am going to discuss in this video how to find out what the output of a recursive program is. I would be using diagrams to illustrate how you can do it, and it's all about tracking down everything, and it's quite fun. So let's get started. So here we have our function, which is called f, and it has two parameters, integer a and integer b. And the base case we have here is if a is less than or equal to b, only then it's going to enter this bracket here. And in this bracket, we notice that there are mainly 4 steps. How do I know this? The very first thing when we enter this bracket is we find out c, the value of c. We don't care what it is, but that is the first step we do when we enter this bracket. The second step we do is to print something. And then the third step is calling another function. Again, we don't care what the function is. Right now, we're just going to count the steps, and this is another step. And then we have a fourth step, which is again calling a function. So now that we know we have 4 steps, we're going to start with the diagram. So I'm going to write here f of 1 and 2. As I said before, it has 4 steps. So it's going to have step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, and step number 4. Before entering the bracket, we have to check the condition. What is the condition? The condition is 1 less than or equal to 2? Yes, it is. So we enter the bracket and we move on to the first step. The first step is saying that c, the value of c, is a plus b divided by 2. A plus b is 1 plus 2 divided by 2, which gives us 3 over 2. But since it's an integer, it's going to round up to being 1. So the value of c is 1. Once we're done with the first step, we move on to the second step. The second step is asking us to print the value of c. So here the value of c is 1, so we print 1. This gets printed. And now that we've done the second step, we move on to the third step. The third step is calling a function. So this is calling a function, and the parameters of this function are a and c minus 1. The a we had was 1, and the c we calculated was also 1. So c minus 1, that is 1 minus 1, which is 0. So the parameters are going to be 1 and 0. Again, since it's a function, it's going to have step number 1, it's going to have step number 2, it's going to have step number 3, and it's going to have a step number 4. But before entering the bracket, which is before going to all these steps, we have to check the condition. What is the condition? Is 1 less than or equal to 0? No, it's not. So it will never go further down. It will never go to all of these steps. Rather, what it does is it moves back to the third step, and since we've already done the third step, it goes on to the fourth step. The fourth step is calling another function, and the parameters that are given to this function are c plus 1. So first I'm just going to erase all of this. So the parameters we have are c plus 1. The value of c we calculated was 1. So c plus 1 is 1 plus 1, which is 2. And then we have b. The value of b here we calculated before was 2. So we write 2. And again, because this is a function, it's going to have step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, and step number 4. Now, before entering all of these steps, we have to check the condition. What's the condition? The condition is 2 less than or equal to 2? Yes, it is. So we go down to the very first step. In the first step, we're calculating the value of c, and the value of c is a plus b divided by 2. Now the a and b we are going to take have to be from this function because we're talking about this function right here. So the value of a and b have to come from this function. That means the value of a is 2 at the moment and the value of b is also 2. So our c is going to be 2 plus 2 divided by 2, which is 4 divided by 2, which is equal to 2. So the value of c is 2. Now that we've calculated the value of c and we're done with the first step, we move on to the second step, which is asking us to print the value of c. And c, as we calculated, is 2. So this right here gets printed in the output. Once we're done with the second step, we move on to the third step here. So the third step is calling another function. So we go down and we write the function. And the parameters given to this function are a and c minus 1. Now, as I said before, since we're talking about this function, the value of a should also come from this function. That being said, the value of a at the moment is 2 and the value of c we calculated before is also 2. So the parameters given to this function are going to be a, which is 2, and then c minus 1, which is 2 minus 1, which is 1. Now, we have another function, so it's again going to have 4 steps. Step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, and step number 4. Before going to these steps, we are again going to check the condition, which is 2 less than or equal to 1? No, it's not. So it's never going to come to all of these steps. Rather, it's going to go back up to step number 3, but since we're already done with 3, it will move on to step number 4 in this function. Step number 4 is again calling a function, and the parameters given to this function are c plus 1 and b. C we calculated before in this function was 2, and b is what we have to take from this function right here. That means b is also 2. Therefore, the parameters of this function are going to be c plus 1, which is 2 plus 1, 3, and then b, which is 2. And again, it's going to have 4 steps. Step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, and step number 4. But before we move on to these steps, it's going to check the condition. Is 3 less than or equal to 2? No, it's not. So it's never going to enter this function. Rather, it's going to go back up to this function and see that we are already done with all 4 steps. Since we're already done with all 4 steps, it will get back to this function right here from where we started. And as we can see here, we're also done with the 4th step of this function. That means we are done with our question and we know the answers. And the output we got from here are 1 and 2. And there's going to be a space between 1 and 2 because that is what we have in our function, because it says system.out.print c plus and there's a space. So yeah, that was it. That's pretty simple, and for me it's actually really interesting. So I hope you liked the video. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all a very productive day ahead.